All right. So look, most workout plans, they fail busy men. And it's not because, they don't work on paper or anything. They probably do work on paper. And the problem is they just don't really survive your real life at all. The second your week gets messy or whatever, it'll have the whole thing, it'll just be falling apart. So today, what I want to do is I want to do something a little different. I'm actually going to walk you through a real client, a real person, and a real setup with serious constraints. And I'm going to show you exactly how I think through building a fat loss program when the goal is actual execution and not really just something, that looks good on a spreadsheet. And before I get into that, I just want to say this is not a template. Like, don't watch this and just copy it word for word or movement for movement, whatever you want to say. What I want you to take from this is just the thinking behind the logic, because that's what actually is going to transfer into your real situation. So we've got three things we're going to be looking at today. Training, we've got 4 days a week. It's structured, it's capped, it's repeatable. We have nutrition. We have, he wants 3 meals a day, and they're simple enough to actually run and precise enough to, actually work. And then we have execution, like hard schedule rules, and we structure wins over motivation every single time. You know what I mean? Okay, so this is where most people completely miss when they build a program. They start with what looks good, not what's actually functional. So here's what we're working with. The goal is fat loss plus athletic reconditioning. So we've got 4 training days a week set on Monday, Tuesday, Friday, and Saturday. The sessions are capped at 30 minutes, not 35, not 40, hard 30 minutes. And he's working out in his home basement. So we're not talking about a fully equipped commercial gym. We're talking about a minimal setup, smooth switching, execution, and everything timed out. So this is the reality of the schedule. Weekday sessions are done in the morning before work, and Saturday is done first thing. Those details matter. Every single one of those details matter because they create the framework for, every decision that's going to come after. A good program, excuse me, a good program starts with, constraints and not your ego. So we have so let me tell you what I intentionally did not do for this client, because this is just as important as what I did do. I did not give him 5 or 6 training days a week because he would laugh at me. Honestly, we did not build in 90-minute sessions because he doesn't have 90 minutes to go exercise in his home gym. No, we have no complex movements whatsoever. Everything is meant to be done in a very small area. We do have rigid meal timing with no flexibility. Just kidding. All or nothing is not our mindset here. Absolutely not. My bad. I messed that up. Here's the thing. All of that stuff sounds pretty good, right? Like the 6 day split, you're super serious, 90-minute session sounds super serious, super specific food sounds really serious, but like none of that actually matters because it means that you're not set up properly. Most programs are going to fail not because the exercises are wrong. They fail because the design ignores, the life around the program, like completely ignores it. And I say this all the time. Most programs fail because they demand a version of you that does not exist. You cannot live in a world that you do not live in. So, here's the actual operating system behind this entire thing, the hidden priorities, because every good program has them and most people just honestly never talk about them. So number one, we have sessions that are short enough to repeat in compliance compounds, short sessions that get done consistently. That's it. That's it. Number two, we built around a fixed schedule, anchors. Um, we're reducing the decision fatigue. The days are locked in before the week even starts. You're not leaving it up to how he feels Tuesday morning because it's already scheduled. Number three, we're using enough structure to create momentum, and clear sessions build good habits. Vague sessions get skipped and you don't know any idea what you're doing. Number four, progression is simple. Busy people don't need some complicated progression tree or whatever. They need a model that they can easily follow and easily understand. Number five, nutrition, boring enough to work, but flexible enough to live with. It starts with the structure, and then there's options within the structure, and that's kind of the whole game or whatever when it comes to nutrition. All right, so here's what the week, actually looks like. Monday we have our hinge and horizontal press. Tuesday, squat and pull. Friday, unilateral work, shoulders, core, and Saturday is, a total, metabolic density circuit. That's the highest output session of the week. And then Wednesday, Thursday, and Sunday are used for recovery or whatever prep that he needs to be doing. And those 4 days is enough. And I cannot stress that enough. 4 days is plenty to drive real progress without blowing up every other aspect of your life. The first 2 sessions early in the week, they cover your hinging, your pressing, your squatting, your pulling. And then Friday is going to reinforce, the unilateral work with your posture and your trunk control. And then Saturdays, what we're going to use to deliver the highest metabolic output because he doesn't have to go to work on Saturdays. And then for the recovery days, they're there for a reason. They're built into his schedule. So he doesn't train on Wednesday because he plays soccer on Tuesday night. So what do? We rest Wednesday, rest Thursday, Friday gets back into it, and then Saturday he's able to go hard. And then for the weekday sessions, like I said, they're always going to be in the morning for him before work. And Saturday, it just has to be the first thing he does before, his daughter wakes up or anything like that. So the method here is, my image didn't come through, whatever. It's density circuits, and I want to explain why, because it's not just like a random choice. A traditional long rest strength workout would have gotten him nowhere with the time that he has. So if you literally got like 30 minutes, you really shouldn't be resting between every set because you're going to end up resting 90% of your 30-minute workout. So that's not good. And then if you're just doing pure conditioning, on the other hand, you're going to lose the resistance training stimulus. You need the muscular tension to support your fat loss and athletic, reconditioning. So density circuits, they give you both. It's more work in less time, but it keeps your training athletic without being completely chaotic. It's going to preserve muscle growth and muscle stimulus, but it's also going to be pushing your conditioning. And like I said, it's built for a 30-minute execution. And one thing I always say is this: you got to move with urgency, not chaos. Really, like, that's the line. You don't get sloppy. This isn't just some random, strength and conditioning class from high school. There's intent behind every single movement that we're doing. So here's how every session actually kind of flows. And this also matters because the design literally removes the negotiation, like, completely. So we start with a 3-minute warm up. Your movement prep. That's pretty much it. You're just kind of warming up the muscles you're going to be using for the rest of the circuit. Then we jump right into the main circuit, which is going to be three rounds most days. But for you to bump it up to 4, that would be great. Minimal transitional waste. Rest only as written. And the hard cap is at 30 minutes, no exceptions. The program, it literally says hard cap 30 minutes, and it should always be done within 30 minutes. That means, you don't you don't go further, you don't ruin the rest of your day because you're worried about, oh, I didn't finish my workout this morning. And that matters a lot for a busy person, because if you have a vague, non-direct program or system, you're going to end up either skipping or not getting the stimulus you need, not getting your heart rate up high enough to actually make changes, and you're just going to stay stuck. So that's why we build sessions this way. So all you do is you show up, you execute, you get it done, you go home or to work, wherever you're going. So the exercise menu here is pretty simple. Man, none of my images came through. That is annoying. So, sorry. And that's completely intentional. Simple high return exercises: hinge and squat, Romanian deadlift, goblet squat, kettlebell deadlift, landmine squat to press. And then you got pressing in rows, dumbbell press, Arnold press, push-ups, band row, chest supported row, lunges and cords, reverse lunges, plank variations, trunk work for control. And then we have our explosive output movements, where we have thrusters, some med ball slams, and athletic output with unnecessary complexity. Every major movement pattern is covered every single week with minimal setup changes and a high return on time. And the logic really is pretty simple, where these movements that are effective, easy to execute in a home basement, and realistic inside a short session, this is not a place for novelty. It's a place for predictable execution and enough load to matter. And you need enough variety for your body to recover, without turning your sessions into one giant circus. All right, last slide. And this is kind of where it all comes together. So you have your 4-week progression model. Week 1, you're learning the flow. We're doing conservative loads. You master the rhythm. You kind of know how you're going to be set up. And then week 2, we're going to build some volume. So you're either going to add reps or a slight load, as long as your form stays good. Week 3, hardest week. And then you're going to reduce the rest and increase the load. And then week 4, strong finish, solid intensity, cleaner execution, and you do not force the overload, but you continue to push yourself. Busy people don't really need a complicated progression tree. They need just a simple model that's easy to understand. And then nutrition, right now, this particular client is on 2,150 calories per day, 230 grams of protein, 160 grams of carbs, and 60 grams of fat, stretched across 3 meals. Now, those are pretty big 3 meals, but this is what the client wanted, so this is what we did. So we have our 8 a.m., 1 p.m., and 6:30 p.m. All those meals are fixed into the schedule. They do not move. But it's flexible with rules. So this client gets 1 treat meal a week, no food after dinner, and he has a list of things that he can go through if something comes up and he doesn't have the food ready. And his Sunday prep is pretty straightforward. All he does, batch cooks his proteins, prepares his carbs, and makes sure his produce is ready. And then you win compliance really before the week even starts, because every Sunday he checks in with me and submits a form that tells me he is ready to go for the week ahead. So it's simple enough to keep running, and it's precise enough to work, and then resilient enough to last for a long time. And that's kind of the whole point of everything we just walked through. A good program doesn't just look effective. It fits the life it's supposed to be working inside. The right setup is going to win simply because it's repeatable. And that's it. That's the whole thing. Being able to do something over and over and over again, especially when it comes to fat loss, is what you need. So if this was helpful, be sure to subscribe and follow along on Instagram at jpratt.fitness_. And I've got more of this coming.